Performance appraisals, a process in search of a technique. Let's think about that. As we start talking about this week's topic, we're going to be focusing exclusively on the performance appraisal process. So today, we're diving into one of the most persistent challenges in human resource management, performance appraisals. Our focus is Chapter 10 of Human Resource Management in Public Service by Berman, Bowman, West, and Van Wart. This chapter is called Appraisal, a Process in Search of a Technique. And if you have ever managed or been subject to a performance review, you already know why that title hits home. So let's begin with the why. Why do we even conduct performance appraisals? Well, in theory, they're tools for aligning employee performance with agency goals, improving communication, and making promotion and retention decisions, and possibly identifying training needs. When they're done well, they promote fairness, transparency, and growth. But in practice, most systems fall short. They become procedural hurdles, dreaded obligations, or worse, tools of political or bias. This is the one core tension the authors highlight. Appraisal is necessary, but it is often poorly executed, leading to that central paradox. On the one hand, everybody agrees appraisals are essential for accountability, as well as effectiveness. On the other, few are satisfied with the process. Why? Because many systems are vague, overtly complex, inconsistently applied, or misaligned with actual job duties. Worse, appraisals are sometimes weaponized or avoided altogether. So, while we're all searching for the right technique, we're often ignoring deeper implementation and cultural issues surrounding the performance appraisals. So, what are the key stages? Well, it involves 4 stages. The first is initial goal setting. This step is foundational. Managers and employees need to jointly define clear, realistic performance goals. These should align with the agency's mission and the roles and responsibilities. And as we have talked about throughout this entire course, it should probably also align with your mission statement and your try this again. They should align with your strategic objectives. Second point, monitoring and data availability. Throughout the year, you need to track performance meaningfully. Without data, whether qualitative or quantitative, you're flying blind when it comes to the assessment. 3, continuous feedback. Performance feedback shouldn't be a once-a-year surprise. Ongoing conversations help guide behavior, they reinforce expectations, and most importantly, they help you build the relationships. And 4, the annual assessment itself. Finally, a formal review sums up performance. But if you've done the first 3 stages well, this isn't a tense moment, it's a natural checkpoint. However, when done right, the cycle supports improvement, not punishment. But when done wrong, it's entirely different. So there are lots of conversation around the types of appraisal systems. What kind of appraisal system works best? Well, the authors outline 4 common models. Trait-based systems. These rate characteristics like integrity, initiative, or cooperation. They're easy to administer, but they can be highly subjective. Behavior-based systems. These focus on observable actions, things like problem solving or communication, better than traits, but still open to bias. And then there's results based systems. These measure output, cases closed, applications processed, budgets met. They're great for clear cut roles, but they may miss the key concept around teamwork or ethics. When we talk about management by objectives, or MBO, here managers and employees set goals together. Success is defined by meeting these targets. It's strategic and collaborative, but it can be time consuming and rigid. No system's perfect. Choosing one requires matching the method to the role, the organization, and the kind of outcome you value. So, what are some of the common problems? Well, let's be honest here. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. Some of the most common issues? Bias is huge. From the halo effect, where one good trait masks all the others, to leniency errors where no one gets critical feedback, or perhaps poor training. Many supervisors don't know how to deliver appraisals constructively. Some avoid the process altogether. Then, of course, there's always a fear of conflict. Especially tough feedback is often sugar coated, vague, or skipped entirely, which undermines credibility. And I'm sure you can recall in your own experience many times where a performance appraisal has been done on a less than stellar employee, but when you go back and look at the appraisals, they're outstanding. Nobody took the time, perhaps fear of conflict. And then there's always the idea of misaligned criteria. Sometimes the evaluation doesn't reflect the actual work being done, especially in a dynamic or hybrid role. All of these problems can compound when there's little accountability for improving the process. Now, if that wasn't bad enough, now things get even more complicated in the public sector. We talked about how the last slide highlights public roles often involve collaboration, discretion, and mission focused work, all of which are harder to measure. Also, political, legal, or union constraints may limit how performance is documented or acted upon. Now, for example, you might have a high performing employee whose measurable outcomes are low due to interagency red tape. How do you rate them fairly? That's the complexity of public service and what it brings to the table. So, how do you make these work? Well, there is good news. There's ways to improve. Some of the best practices include emphasize coaching, not just evaluation. Align appraisal criteria with agency strategy. Again, thinking about vision, mission, goals. Use both data and human judgment. Train supervisors to communicate with clarity and empathy. And most of all, build a culture where feedback is normalized and not feared. An effective appraisal system reflects how your organization values people, not just what they produce. So, as a final takeaway, think about this. It's not about the tool, it's about the culture. Here's the bottom line: the best appraisal system fails in a broken culture. The worst can work with strong leadership. Technique matters, but culture determines success. If trust is low or feedback is weaponized, no form of rating scale can fix it. The best public leaders create environments where performance conversations are honest, developmental, and regular, not feared or avoided or politicized. So let's take a moment and reflect. When you're in your live session or thinking about this in a group, pause and consider what's your personal experience with performance evaluations? Which type of appraisal system feels most applicable in your context? And what would you need to change in your agency to make appraisals more meaningful? These aren't easy questions, but they're essential if we want performance management to actually serve people and improve public service. So, in closing, thanks for listening in. For those following along, we've been reading chapter 10. You can delve a little bit deeper into this, and I look forward to seeing everyone in the live session later this week.